entire world seems to be asking the same question. Where is Spider-Man?
Love me, love me.
Somewhere in a movie theater tonight, an audience is watching Spider-Man: Brand New Day, and the entire room goes quiet at the same moment. On screen, Peter Parker freezes. His spider sense is going off. He doesn't know why yet. He just knows, a full second before the camera reveals the threat, that something is wrong. Audiences love that beat. It feels impossible, a warning system that fires before the danger even arrives. But here's the strange part. You already have one. It's not radioactive. Nobody bit you, and it's been running since long before the first comic book was ever drawn. You felt it, walking down an empty street and suddenly crossing to the other side, for no reason you could name, sensing someone was staring at you before you turned around and confirmed it, getting a bad feeling about a person, a room, a decision, seconds before your conscious mind could explain why. You called it a gut feeling, a hunch, maybe even a coincidence. It isn't. It's a functioning piece of neural architecture, and understanding how it works will change the way you think about every instinct you've ever had. Start with the actual pathway your brain uses to detect danger. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux spent decades mapping exactly how a threat signal moves through your skull, and what he found split fear processing into two completely separate routes. He called them the low road and the high road. The high road is what you'd expect. Information travels from your eyes or ears to the sensory cortex, gets analyzed, interpreted, understood, and only then triggers a response. Slow, careful, conscious. But the low road skips almost all of that. It runs directly from a structure called the thalamus straight to the amygdala, your brain's alarm center, bypassing the parts of your brain responsible for conscious thought entirely. Ledoux's research puts the speed of that low road at somewhere around 12 milliseconds. That's faster than you can blink, faster than you can form the thought, what was that? Your amygdala already knows. Your conscious mind is still catching up. This is why you can jerk backward from something on the ground before you've consciously registered whether it's a stick or a snake. Your body already moved. The decision came later, packaged as an emotion, so that it would feel like you chose to react, when really something older and faster made the call for you. Think about what that actually means. Somewhere inside your skull, there is a structure that has been granted the authority to override your entire conscious mind instantly, without asking permission, whenever it detects a pattern that resembles danger. It doesn't wait for proof. It doesn't wait for you to think it through. It acts first and explains itself later, if it explains itself at all. And it isn't only fear. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio spent years studying patients with damage to a very specific part of the brain, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for translating bodily signals into usable information. What he found reshaped how psychologists understand decision-making entirely. Damasio proposed what's now called the somatic marker hypothesis, the idea that your body generates physical signals, a tightening chest, a knot in your stomach, a flush of unease tied to specific choices and situations, often before you're consciously aware of any danger at all. In experiments using a card game rigged with hidden risky decks, healthy participants began showing stress responses in their skin, measurable, physical, real, well before they could consciously articulate which decks were dangerous. Their bodies had figured it out first. Their conscious minds were still guessing. Patients with damage to that specific brain region showed no such signals. And here's the unsettling part. Their intelligence stayed completely intact. They could reason. They could calculate. What they lost was the early warning system. Without it, they made worse decisions, not because they couldn't think, but because they could no longer feel the warning before the mistake happened. The gut feeling wasn't decoration, it was data, and losing access to it made people measurably worse at navigating their own lives. So, where does all of this come from? Why would a body be built with an alarm system faster and more authoritative than conscious thought itself? Because for nearly the entire span of human existence, waiting to consciously reason through a threat was a luxury your ancestors couldn't afford. A rustle in tall grass didn't come with a label. It might might be wind, it might be a predator, an ancestor who paused to calmly analyze the situation before reacting was statistically at a severe disadvantage compared to one whose body had already flinched, already turned, already begun to move before the conscious mind had finished asking the question. Across enough generations, across enough near misses, the fast reactors were simply the ones who survived to pass on that same wiring. You are, quite literally, descended from an unbroken line of people whose bodies moved before their minds understood why. This wasn't random luck, it was selection, running for hundreds of thousands of years, favoring speed over certainty again and again until speed became the default setting of the human nervous system. Consider what this alarm system was actually built to detect back when it was first taking shape. Not car crashes, not scam emails, not awkward small talk with a stranger at a party. It was built for a narrower, older set of dangers, an ambush predator hidden in tall grass, a rival group approaching from the tree line, a member of your own tribe whose behavior had shifted in a way that suggested betrayal. Those threats shared a common feature. They were almost always preceded by subtle physical cues, a change in posture, a break in normal movement patterns, an unfamiliar silence where there should have been ordinary sound. Your ancestors, who could pick up on those cues below the threshold of conscious thought, had a real survival edge over ancestors who needed to consciously reason their way to the same conclusion. Over enough generations, that edge became hardwired, which reframes something you've probably dismissed your entire life. That feeling of being watched. It sounds irrational, almost supernatural, the kind of thing people are embarrassed to admit they take seriously. But peripheral vision, the part of your visual field outside direct focus, is remarkably sensitive to movement, even movement you never consciously register. A shift in shadow, a change in stillness across a room. Your peripheral system can pick up that signal, forward it straight through the low road, and trigger a genuine physiological alert, a prickle at the back of your neck, a tightening in your shoulders, long before your conscious attention ever turns to confirm what set it off. You're not imagining the feeling, you're just detecting something your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. This is also why trained professionals in high-stakes fields, combat veterans, emergency room doctors, experienced firefighters, so often describe decisions that saved lives as instinctive rather than reasoned. Not because they abandoned logic, but because years of exposure trained their low road to recognize patterns faster than their conscious mind could name them. The instinct wasn't magic, it was pattern recognition, compressed down to a speed conscious thought simply can't match. Researchers who study expert decision-making describe this as recognition-primed judgment. The brain scanning a situation against thousands of stored patterns from past experience and surfacing a single best answer as a feeling without ever walking through the reasoning step by step. Novices have to think their way to a conclusion. Experts often just feel it because their low road has been trained on enough real examples to skip straight to the answer. Of course, a system built for speed instead of accuracy isn't perfect. It's the same reason you can feel a jolt of alarm at a coat rack in a dark room, or feel your pulse spike over a text message that turns out to be completely harmless. False alarms are the cost of a system that would rather overreact 100 times than miss one real threat. But that trade-off, annoying as it is in a modern living room, is exactly what kept your ancestors alive in a world with no other option. Here's the twist most people never consider. Every single time you've trusted a hunch and been right, every time a decision felt obviously correct before you could explain why, you weren't being lucky and you weren't being irrational. You were listening to a genuinely evolved sensory system, one built by hundreds of thousands of years of exactly the kind of high-stakes filtering that built everything else about your body. The eye that detects motion, the ear that catches a footstep, the nervous system that flinches from heat before you consciously register pain. Your instinct for danger belongs to that same ancient category. It just happens to be harder to see because it doesn't announce itself the way a hand pulling back from a stove does. It shows up quieter, a feeling, a pressure behind the ribs, a voice that says something is wrong without ever explaining what. Fiction gave that feeling a name and a mask and turned it into a superpower, something extraordinary, granted to one person by an extraordinary accident. But the real version isn't rare, and it isn't fictional. It's standard equipment. Every person walking past you on the street today carries a version of the exact same system, tuned slightly differently by genetics and experience, but built from the same 12-millisecond pathway, the same amygdala, the same somatic markers rising up from the body before the conscious mind finishes its sentence. Even the parts of your daily life that feel nothing like danger still run through this system, deciding, without quite knowing why, that you don't trust someone in a job interview, feeling instantly at ease in one apartment and unsettled in another that looks identical on paper, sensing that a friend is upset before they've said a single word about it, just from the shape of their silence. None of that is mind reading. It's the same low road, the same somatic markers, scanning faces, postures, tones of voice, and rooms faster than conscious thought, then quietly handing you the conclusion dressed up as a feeling. You've been running on this system your entire life without ever being told it had a name. So the next time your stomach tightens for no clear reason, or you feel the sudden, wordless urge to leave a room, don't wave it off as nothing. You're not imagining a superpower. You're noticing one that was already there, quietly running in the background of every single day of your life, inherited from every ancestor who trusted it just long enough to survive and pass it down to you.